Hello there, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have this chance to have a chat to you and share some potentially new ways that Aurelia and Musician may be able to support your students' learning during these somewhat challenging times. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Can I just have a quick audio check? If someone can just give me a thumbs up or something in the chat window, that would be fantastic. Great, thank you so much. My name's Tim Wilson, and I'm joined today by a couple of my colleagues, Peter and another Tim, who will be largely manning the Q&A area. So if you have any questions along the way, please drop them a message there, and I'll get back to you during the webinar, or we'll follow up. Afterwards. Let me just do a quick screen share here. Okay. So we have quite a few different items to discuss today, and we've also got quite a broad audience joining us for this webinar. So I think the webinar is going to be part kind of tutorial, a little bit of kind of tips and tricks, ways, some, ideas that may just help increase your productivity in the way that you can use the programs and get the most out of them. And also we'll spend a bit of time having a look at some of the new content in the programs. So hopefully there'll be a little bit of something for everyone. Having said that, if you are here and you're kind of looking at that list and wondering what's going on and your brain is screaming, help, I need the basics, we won't be looking at too much of that today. So if that is kind of currently where you're at with the programs, then I will just refer you to these other resources. There are plenty of training videos there and other items that you can access that will take you through all those kind of areas of both Aurelia and Musician, just to give you a better understanding of that kind of more basic content, basic setup, and so on. All right, tiny bit of housekeeping. As I mentioned, Q&A, if you have questions, please pop them in there and we'll get back to you during the session, or reply via email afterwards. Also, as I mentioned, we do have quite a broad audience today, so I'm just going to run a quick poll. So if you'd care to just offer some feedback there, we will use this to a degree to just help kind of drive how we shape and direct this webinar to a point based on your feedback and the kind of main issues or main kind of areas and topics that you'd like us to kind of focus on today. And the final item here, a few people have already been asking, will the webinar be recorded? And yes, it will. So you'll be able to potentially, review it later, or share it with your colleagues if need be. All right, great. Thank you for your feedback in the poll. Okay, so first off, I guess one of the main things on all of our minds at the moment is finding effective and engaging ways to deliver core ear training and theory content to our students when we're delivering both either remote or hybrid courses. So Aurelia and Musician are set up to deliver this type of content in a number of different ways, from providing basic practice support for your students across any kind of devices, providing more kind of structured tests, learning tasks, exams, or our worksheets and quizzes. They're also able to integrate with your LMS, whether it be Canvas, Moodle, Blackboard, or any number of other systems, which just provides a much more seamless, integrated experience for your students. We'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Of course, you can use the tests and quizzes feature to deliver things like placement exams, diagnostic exams. And Finally, the reporting area obviously gives you the feedback that you need to be able to direct your students, provide extension work, remedial work where necessary, or just make sure that students are hitting the required kind of benchmarks for their learning. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just jump into the programs quickly. Okay, and let me just close this poll up. Okay, so I'm just in Safari here now. I'm at Aurelia.cloud. So firstly, for many of you who may have used the programs for a number of years, you may be quite used to your students primarily using the installed Windows or Mac apps to access all the content. So now almost all the content from the installed apps is available in the browser. So this obviously opens up a whole lot more opportunities for students to access the programs on phones, tablets, Chromebooks, laptops, any kind of device, just through their browser. You'll see here that all the core practice topics and content are available, from basic interval recognition through scales, and moving into chords, various dictations for rhythm, and onto more advanced content, part dictation, and chromatic, harmonic dictation, and things like that, plus everything in between. So you'll also notice here that musician content practice area is also available. So again, it's a more integrated experience for students if they're using the programs via the browser. Again, all your core kind of subjects and topics, from everything from basic rhythm reading to reading and writing key signatures, and lots of other content there. So this is kind of basically, for those of you who haven't spent much time with the programs, this is basically the kind of practice area where students have essentially free range practice to work through the various topics and develop their skills. And we're going to talk more specifically about creating and assigning tasks, and more specific learning tasks in a moment. Okay, speaking of tasks, also via the browser here, browser access, you'll notice that all the tasks are also delivered side by side. So here I have a theory task on 6/4 progressions, and I also have a supporting ear training task as well on 6/4 progressions. So students can access this content side by side, delivering both their theory and their ear training content, with all of that nicely aligned. Okay, so we're not going to spend too much more time in the practice area here. What I'd love to do is actually explore some of the tests and worksheets side of things. So I'm going to move just over to the installed apps here, and I might start with musician. So as the instructor, you will essentially, to administer tasks, you still do that using the installed apps. It gives you access to a whole bunch of different kind of powerful administration tools, and our library, and a whole range of other things you can use to create content and deliver really specific things to each of your student groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the test area here. I'm actually just going to create a little worksheet, and then I'll assign it to my students, and we'll actually complete that in the browser just to see what that looks like. Okay, so again, we have lots and lots of tests and worksheets in here that you can use. So it would be simply a matter of, say, selecting a worksheet in here and then assigning it to your class over on this side. And you would normally obviously have a large list of classes there that you could assign your tasks to. So yeah, quite easy to use any of that existing content. You can also copy it and edit it to suit your needs. So you can certainly refine any of the content that's there, reorder it to make it match your curriculum needs. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a little worksheet from scratch. So I'm just going to click on the plus button there, and I'm just going to call this week 1 worksheet. Now I'm going to set this task to be desktop and browser because I want it to be available on both platforms. And if you have any questions about which items are available on both platforms at the moment, you can select that little information icon. That will give you a list of all the topics, and down the bottom here you can see the library question types that are also supported. Okay, now there are a number of options here, again depending on whether you're setting up a formal assessment or perhaps just a supporting worksheet for your students. So the first one here is we can allow multiple attempts on a task. We can allow students to resume the task or complete it over multiple sittings, as well as set things like, will the student get feedback as they work their way through the task? So a bunch of different settings here, depending on the context of the task. We can set a time limit. Set a 20-minute time limit on there. And I would like my student to get a little pop-up warning after 5 minutes just to tell them that they need to get their skates on and finish the task. And I can also set a time slot here, and we'll talk a bit more about how this works within an LMS in a moment. But just for now, I'm going to set a time slot. And so currently this task will be available from August 6th through to August the 14th. And then I can define the contents of my worksheet just by selecting entries. So we do have other training videos, excuse me, that focus on task creation as well. So you can find those also on our website and our YouTube channel. Okay, so here we have the test editor window. And again, I'm just going to click on plus here to add an item to our worksheet. So initially, I'm just going to choose a question here that perhaps draws from, let me see, from rhythm tapping. So I can come in here and choose my rhythm tapping topic, and I'll just choose something from, say, level 3, and I can see the content of this level here in the description. Choose my number of questions, number of marks that are assigned, and there's a few rounding options here as well that can be of use in topics where multiple marks are assigned. Okay, so you'll notice here that this task has now been added, or this entry has now been added to my worksheet down the bottom here. And I can continue to add additional bits of content. So I'll just click on plus again. Now this time, I just like to add what we call a library drill. And it's important to distinguish here between the two different options. So the first entry that I added is drawn, the rhythm tapping entry that I selected here is drawn from our complete syllabus. And this was set up as a level drill, or what we call a level drill. And what this means for students is that musician will randomly create or draw something from that level to use in the worksheet. So every student will get a slightly different set of questions, but still drawing from the same level of difficulty. So this can be useful for supporting worksheets. It can also be useful for things like I guess cases where students just need to do lots and lots of repetitions to work on particular skills, because it means each time they do the worksheet, they will get a different set of questions for that entry in the test. For more formal assessments, where you may want a fixed set of questions, you can use the library drill, and this will draw from more specific sets or fixed questions that are drawn from the library, and we'll touch base a bit more on the library in a moment. Okay, so I'm going to add an entry here, and I'm just going to click on select questions. Now, we did have someone get in touch with us prior to the webinar, just asking about some other note reading exercises, note writing rather, exercises in alto and tenor clefs, where the student had to actually enter a octave specific pitch. So, excuse me, so I'm just going to, we can even type in the octave designation we're looking for. So I'll type in C3. Our question has popped up. Before we add it to our worksheet, I can just click on that little preview button there, and I can check that that question meets my needs. So it's asking specifically for C3. So if I click in C4 there, I'm told no. You can turn off those annoying sounds if they start to drive you crazy as well. All right, so if I'm happy with that question, I can then just add it over here, and that is added to my my entry for this particular worksheet. Okay, so, and I can of course rename that. All right, fantastic. So I'm just going to add just a couple more entries, just so we can see some of the other types of question types that can be found in the program. So first of all, I'm going to search for a form-based question, and I'll just choose this one and add it to our worksheet. And we'll have a look at that in more detail when we actually run the worksheet as a student. And finally, I'll just type form in there. And finally, I'd just like to add another library entry. And this time I'd like some, say, harmonic analysis, and I'd like to include something with applied chords. All right, so again, I won't preview that for now. I will just add it to my worksheet. And something that may be of interest for those of you that have been using the programs for a while is there are a bunch of new options in here now that allow you to really control the chord palette or various other items that are displayed for the student during the worksheet. So for this particular harmonic dictation exercise, harmonic analysis, what I'm going to do is, rather than having the full harmonic analysis palette available, including all chromatic chords and all that content, I'm just going to restrict the chord palette to only use the required chords to actually answer the question correctly. There are a number of other options in here as well. If you have multiple questions within this level, you can choose required chords for the entry, and it just means you can control the palette that's displayed there. So rather than students potentially getting, if they're doing a level that only has chords 1 and 5, rather than them getting overwhelmed seeing augmented sixth chords and applied chords, you can set the level up so that students only see chords 1 and 5 or 1, 4, 5, or whatever pertains to your particular curriculum requirements. So I'm just going to choose, put this as required chords per question for this particular item. All right, fantastic. So we've created our worksheet, we've assigned it to our classes. So for students, if I jump back to our browser now and go to tasks, this particular task will pop up in my priority task list here up the top. I can see when it's due. I can see that it's starting to get a little bit urgent. Okay, so let's just work through this so we can see what this looks like. Okay, so the first question, I'm just tapping using the space bar. If I'm on a touch device, a phone or a tablet, then I can touch on the screen to get my answer. So if I happen to get a little bit creative, I then get some nice feedback that indicates where I tapped correctly and where I missed the relevant rhythmic values. Now, you remember that we left feedback on for this particular task. For a more formal assessment, we could have turned that off so students would not see these dialogues as they work through the worksheet. Okay, here's our C3 task question. And our form question, which of the following best represents the form of the piece? And this is just a basic multiple choice question. Important to note here that there are many questions in the program that draw from common repertoire, real repertoire. And in Aurelia, we can see some more of that, how that's linked to audio recordings and a whole range of other scores and notation files. Okay, and finally, a little harmonic analysis question. So let's just click in a few goodies here. Let's pop in some random. Actually, we better get a few things correct. And let's just pop in that, and then I'll submit my answer, and we get again some nice feedback. I can see where things didn't quite go as planned, and in Musician I can then of course play back that excerpt. Okay, Zoom's doing something a little bit strange to the audio playback there. But yeah, basically in Musician, once you submit your answer, you can then always orally reinforce that concept. Okay, my results have popped up, which is, I can see a nice breakdown here of each entry in the worksheet and my overall score. As I mentioned before, we opted when we set up the test for that, for the final score to be displayed for the student on completion of the worksheet, but you can certainly turn that off as you may like to for a more formal assessment. Okay, so that's a little musician worksheet. What we might do now is jump over to Aurelia, and let's create a little worksheet there quickly, just so you can see some more of the e-training content and investigate a few items there. So again, all the content and basic ideas in the administration of Musician and Aurelia are shared. And we'll talk a bit more about this later, but all the content, new content we've been creating provides alignment across both e-training and the theory learning areas, so that if your courses do use lots of aligned content like that, then you can easily deliver that content in the programs, and students will have a kind of really clear map of how that content is aligned across the programs. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new worksheet again. Week 1, Aural. Again, set this for desktop and browser, and I'll allow a few attempts. Now, I will just quickly set a time slot for this task as well. And I won't worry about a time limit for now. We'll just jump straight into entries. So I think the first item we'll add here will perhaps be again a level drill. So drawing from a syllabus, and let's see, let's jump into, say, scales from level 7. So we can see level 7 contains major, minor variations, some pentatonic scales, and so on, as well as a bunch of modes, ascending, descending, or just descending. One question for that. You can obviously add as many questions as you like there. And this time, I'm going to add a library drill. Oops. Library drill. And I'm going to look for some melodic dictation And I'm going to draw from this Beethoven work here. And again, I'll just preview this before we get into the drill. Okay, fantastic. So if I deem that that question fits my needs, I can go great, add that to my entry. Now, something else I'd like to show you here now as well is what we're going to do is we're going to add some additional questions. And I'm going to create a little question pool. And in these remote and hybrid learning times, this function can be super useful. So once I exit out of here, so what it allows you to do is control the questions or the pool of questions that will be available to your students in this particular test entry. But if you have any concerns about students cheating, then you can set it up so that Aurelia will randomly choose one question from this pool of questions. So you're really controlling the exact questions that are included in the pool, but creating this little setting so that only a single one of those questions will be delivered. So it can be a good way to stop students from being on the phone or whatever other messaging kind of system they use, asking, what did you get for question 2A or anything like that. So creating these little question pools can be super useful. It's also possible to increase the question count so that it matches the number of questions here, but then you can still have the questions delivered in a random order. So again, just kind of creating a bit of randomization to keep your students on their toes. If they want to cheat, then they have to try really, really hard. Similarly, if you need the questions to be delivered in exactly the same order for all your students, you can simply uncheck that option and you're away. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to swap this back to just one question to be drawn from this pool. All right, fantastic. So let me just jump back over to the browser again, where our student can complete this task. And here we have our little oral task here. I'll click on Start. And again, apologies, Zoom seems to be doing some weird audio things there on my end. Hopefully it's okay on your end. Select my answer. I can obviously set this up so that I had 3 replays available in the test, so I can replay if I need to. And submit. And then let's jump into okay, you can see I've been asked to transcribe the Horn 2 part this time. And so on like that. And then I get some nice notation. I can play back the audio and compare it against what I answered and what I submitted. All right, so there we go, 36%, not my best effort, but it was a useful practice task. All right, so that's kind of a quick overview of really quickly and easily creating worksheets to deliver for your students in the browser on whatever device they are using. Super flexible, super easy to set up, and you can really control the content if you want to the nth degree. But at the same time, there's lots and lots of existing content in there that you can use straight away without having to dig into any of the customization side of the program. Simply a matter of just assigning a task to your class. So it's quite a simple setup. Okay, what we're going to do now is just talk a little bit about LMS integration. So again, in these times, I'm sure most of you are using your university college LMS, whether it be based on Canvas, Canvas, Blackboard, or any of the other systems that are available. So I'm just going to end this poll now, but thank you for your feedback. And so there are many advantages to using the programs via your LMS. The first one being single sign-on for students, so they log into your LMS. They don't need to worry about a separate login for Aurelia or Musician. And then, of course, being able to access their content within your LMS, and also with results returning back to your LMS gradebook. Just makes that whole integration a lot more seamless for both students and instructors. So I'm just going to jump into our e-training 101 course here that we've got set up. And we've got a few tasks going here. And it's important to note there are two different sorts of tasks. One is a practice task and across either program. And then we also have tasks that connect to an individual test or worksheet in the program. So I'll just launch this one so you can see how this looks. Okay, so that opens up the practice area, all embedded within Canvas. Students can do free range practice here. They can also move into their musician topics. So quite easy to access all that content. Now, let's just have a quick look also at a task launch. So as I mentioned, these are tied to specific worksheets or tests or courses in Aurelia and Musician. And again, we have another training video that can show you more specifically how to do that within your LMS. But just to give you a quick idea, here is an example of a dictation worksheet that we've created, all running in the browser. I'll click on Start. And again, I think our Beethoven work gets another workout here. And so on. Student can submit their answer. Incorrect answer. And then we've just got one other dictation exercise. And here's an example of where we've limited the palette to, again, a really specific set of chord vocabulary, just so the student isn't distracted by more advanced elements that they're perhaps not ready for. Excellent. So as you can hear there's some more contemporary content in the programs as well to support all sorts of different learning for your students. Fantastic. So I finished my task here. So I'm just logged in as an instructor, so the gradebook results won't have flown back. But typically, if a student had logged in there, then the task that we had just done, those results would then go back to the gradebook and be available for you to view and provide any additional feedback on for your students. Just quickly, one other thing I neglected to mention before. Obviously, after your students complete a task, you can look at their results in the Canvas or in the LMS gradebook, as I just mentioned. But if you're want to preview specific results within Aurelia and Musician, you can also do that here. So I'll just go to reports here really quickly. So for more kind of detailed information that you may not get from your LMS, you can jump in here and there are all sorts of reports. A really useful one can be just the overall summary report. So if I just need to see how student Tim Wilson has gone this year, I can view this report and I should have some data, not that much, but this will give you just a little bit of an idea. So I can see in practice the topics that my student has attempted, how long the student has spent with the program, and my results. students' results. You also get a nice breakdown here of any tests that the student has completed and their results there as well. And you would also get courses data there as well. So, so you can get a really kind of clear indication of how students are progressing through the programs. Now, if you need more specific information on how a student has gone in a worksheet or a test, if you use library-based content, so fixed content in your test or worksheet, you can come to the grading area here, and I may not have one to show you right at the moment. This one may be available. So in here, okay, so in here, we can have a look at this particular melodic dictation question and see exactly what the student entered. So Aurelia, by default, has assigned a grade of 3 out of 10. But if you in this particular example, if the student had got the first bar correct and then perhaps got the contour perfect for the rest of the excerpt, but perhaps started one step too high, you can always regrade this if need be, add comments for the student, add comments for yourself as well, private comments. So this whole grading area of the software can certainly be a great use if you're starting to explore some areas of the programs where you need to essentially get that more detailed feedback on exactly what students have entered. So you can step through the tests as a student would essentially see them and preview the question, and also how the student approached answering the question. All right, so I think that's enough on tests and worksheets. Hopefully that provides some useful information, and for those of you that have been using the programs for a while, hopefully just gives you a few additional options that you may be able to apply to content as you create it. Okay, I'd like to move on to content now. We've got a few different things we'd like to talk about. Excuse me. So what I'd like to do to start off with is I'm just going to log into a different cloud service to show you some of the other content. So we've been working really hard to create a whole bunch of new content, based on compositions by women composers and composers of colour. So this content isn't available yet, but a lot of it will be really soon. And here are just some of the composers that we're looking at, including content for. So just to give you a quick look at this, I'll just jump into the library. Okay. So in here, we have tags and things that we can search for. As I said, we won't have time to explore the library in great detail today, but for those of you that haven't explored it, essentially it's a huge resource that includes real audio recordings, scores, images, and a whole range of things. You can essentially select a piece of media, which is all organized by a composer, and then over on the right, you can see any questions that are attached to that piece of media. You can preview it up in the top right-hand corner there to check if it kind of meets your curriculum requirements. It can be used in your courses. You can, of course, import your own content as well, import your own audio, excuse me, import your own notation as well, and add images and all sorts of things. Okay, so let me just jump in here and have a look at a few quick questions here. So here's an example where one piece of media is used for a variety of question types. So again, we can have things from basic multiple choice question types where the student has to identify the cadence, and so on like that. They can, of course, then play that back through to questions where the student may have to just identify the key of the work, through to harmonic analysis questions. And again, I'm just going to add in just all tonic chords there, which is what I used to do at university if I had no idea how to do a harmonic analysis of whatever was presented to me, and usually you don't do too badly. So here we go. Again, I can play that back. I can see exactly where things went astray. So they're just a couple of little examples. I'll jump to Aurelia in a moment. But yes, you'll be able to search in this library for really specific kinds of content, whether they relate to harmonic analysis, form, phrase structure, key ID, cadences, a whole range of other things. In Aurelia, again, we'll look at some ear training questions here. And we might have a look at this one after the cakewalk. And again here, so we've got a little excerpt, bars 5 to 8 of this particular work, and it's used for a whole range of questions from harmonic dictation, and submit, and so on like that. And you'll note that exactly the same bit of media can then be used to deliver melodic dictation questions. And so on. And I can see my answer down the bottom here. And also rhythm dictation, scale degrees, and a whole range of other things. So all integrated within the library here. You'll also note that the library function gives you a lot of flexibility as well. So whilst this particular excerpt, the harmonic vocabulary was quite limited within that 4 bars, and could be used for a topic or a level that was only using, say, chords 1, 4, 5, 7. If we expand this excerpt to use bars 5 to 12, we start to introduce applied chords. So a harmonic dictation exercise here. Now I'm going to choose the option that has a limited chord palette just for now. And so on like that. So I guess this is a good example of with the flexibility of the library. It allows you to use excerpts, kind of slice and dice them in a non-destructive way within the library, to use different sets, different excerpts within that to deliver content across a whole range of different levels for your students, whether they're dealing with just kind of primary chords and basic sevenths, to things where they're starting to have to understand applied chords, secondary dominants, and all those sorts of things. Okay. All right. So I'll just jump back over here now. One of the next things we're going to have a quick little look at is some of the kind of new theory and ear training kind of sequence content we've been working on. And essentially this content, I'll just jump back into a different cloud service here. Essentially this content maps a lot of the levels and library questions in Aurelia and Musician into a sequence that may be more applicable for, I guess, a typical 4-semester year training or and theory learning sequence at a college or university level. Now, obviously, there are many different ways that instructors like to deliver this content in different orders. Excuse me. And basically, as the instructor, you will, of course, always have the option to edit any of this content, reorder it to fit your specific curriculum needs. But just to give you a quick idea, again, I can jump back into the browser for a lot of this. So under tasks, we have created some new groups that basically integrate lots and lots of different pre-built worksheets here that you can use. They're laid out in units 1 through 14 or 15, containing all sorts of content. So if this fitted your needs, you could certainly roll this out as a, unit 1 equals week 1 and deliver it like that for your students, or you can mix and match it to suit your curriculum needs. So here you can see worksheets delivering pitch questions, simple meters, and so on in a very kind of clear sequence with some review stages along the way. And something like the pitch worksheet will cover everything from basically basic pitch class through to understanding, clefs and accidentals, note reading across all the common clefs, as well as note writing, clef transposition, relating all of that to the piano keyboard and understanding how inharmonic notes interact with that, and then just understanding some basic, half and whole step intervals, and as we mentioned earlier, then getting into understanding some more octave-specific note writing concepts. So all of these are laid out, in a very kind of sequential manner. As I mentioned before, you will also get content where you will be able to see theory and ear training worksheets side by side, both supporting the same kind of core concepts, 6/4 progressions in this case, cadences, and so on. So from a practice perspective for students, they will also have access to these various syllabi. I might jump to musician for this. So in here, I might select theory 1. In here, you can see now under the practice area, if you choose to assign this particular syllabus to your students, then all the levels and the topics that are available are aligned more specifically with that syllabus. And syllabus customization is not something that we really looked at today, but again, we have training videos on that. If you wanted to, you could take this syllabus as the basis for your course, edit it, copy it, and edit it to suit your needs. So you can certainly customize any of those items to fit your curriculum requirements. So you'll note, if I jump into note reading here, then all the level names and the content is broken up into units that could align with the weeks of your semester if you choose to approach it like that. So lots and lots of useful things in there that hopefully you can draw upon, and hopefully they'll take away some of the potential working in creating and setting up some of your own content, even if it doesn't, what we've provided doesn't exactly fit your needs. It's a kind of could be a good starting point that you can then customize, copy, and use to fit your needs more specifically. Okay, so in there we also include a fundamental sequence as well, a 15-week sequence that you can draw upon if need be. All right, so now I'd just like to jump into some of the 4-part writing content in the programs. So we've been working on a variety of worksheets and things here. Oops, sorry, go back to tasks again. to support part writing and species counterpoint in a number of ways. Let's click on this little test task group here. So we've created a bunch of worksheets that kind of deal with, you know, all these various elements of part writing in isolation initially. So students can work on understanding, you know, melodic motion, identifying, you know, not only understanding the definitions of, you know, various types of melodic motion, but then also, you know, visually identifying them in a displayed excerpt. And so on through all these sorts of drills. So tendency tones, where the student has to, you know, do practice at resolving chordal sevens, resolving leading tones by entering them on the notation. I'll jump into this perfect consonances worksheet here so that you can just see view some of this content. So it starts off with just some basic kind of you know, definitions type questions, multiple choice definitions type questions, just to make sure students are understanding the key concepts before moving into some notation based things. And again, we start with just some really basic questions like this, where the student has to just identify the parallel octaves that have occurred in this particular excerpt, and they have to identify, you know, which voices the parallel octaves have occurred between. So again, trying to approach this content by dealing with a lot of these key concepts in isolation, so students can learn their core skills before they end up having to combine them all in the context of actually doing a proper, you know, part writing exercise. So lots and lots of different isolation of drills in here. Again, parallel unison. And I'll just pin this navigator here. Again, for those of you that haven't used the programs too much in the browser, you'll notice here that we also have this navigator in the browser that if you set it up for a test using library content, you can set it up so students can kind of navigate around a test or a worksheet, I guess in the same way they would in a kind of pen and paper type environment. Okay, so all sorts of similar questions dealing with hidden octaves and fifths, contrary fifths and octaves, unequal fifths. And then we have a few different question types that then just start to tie together some of those skills that that have come earlier on in the worksheet. So here we're asked to identify the voice leading error found between each chord in the displayed extract. So in here, the student can basically step through from chord to chord, identifying in isolation any particular errors that are that occur there. So you'll notice that there are also examples where there are no errors, as long as a lot of the kind of core errors that can occur, and I can submit my answer. Okay, so in addition to that, some other error ID questions here, again, just dealing initially with shorter excerpts. So here the student, in this case, again, is just identifying which voice leading error is observed in the displayed extract. Multiple choice here, and as they work their way through the various questions, the kind of difficulty and the variety, the variety of answer options available there will also change or step up in difficulty as different concepts are introduced or tested. So lots of hopefully useful information and drills in there for students that, as I mentioned, can help them develop and understand those core part writing skills. Okay, I will leave this task. So these can be delivered, across all sorts of concepts. And down the bottom here, I'll just show you a quick example of a part writing exercise, which is a manually assessed part writing exercise, I guess in a more traditional sense. So here the student can simply choose their voice and come in, pop in there, answer as such. and then select their other voices and enter their parts, and then submit that, excuse me, for assessment by the instructor. So within a worksheet, this would then appear in the grading area for the instructor to review. So you certainly can deliver all these types of questions in the programs. And again, we have quite a large bank of questions that you can draw upon for these question types, but you can equally add your own. So if you wanted to deliver a question that perhaps displayed just the melody along with chords, along with Roman numerals, then you can deliver those types of questions as well, or any other kind of variations where the Roman numerals are also displayed. Okay, so lots of other hopefully useful content there you can draw upon. Even just drills that look at harmonic function, where the student has to identify the harmonic function of an excerpt. On the counterpoint front, again, a bunch of worksheets that deal with initially fundamentals, so questions relating to just basic definitions, understanding start and finishing pitch rules, the use of rhythm and accidentals, and some error ID questions, through to some counterpoint writing questions like so. Okay, we are almost at the end of our webinar for today. If any questions have popped up along the way that haven't been answered in the Q&A, please feel free to get in touch. Info at Rising Software. I am just going to release one additional poll here. We will be doing some other training sessions in the future. So if you're interested in exploring any of those, whether they're just you need to have a look more at the basics of how to use the programs, feel free to complete that poll, and we can certainly get in touch when we're delivering those webinars and point you to any relevant content that may just assist with getting you up to speed with how you can get the most out of the programs and really easily integrate them into your programs to support your students' learning. Well, thank you very, very much for joining us today. We do also have some other resources, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, that may be of interest. Again, lots of training items. Our educators, our closed educators Facebook group may be of interest. It's kind of a forum where instructors can interact, share ideas, and perhaps get some ideas just for best practice as far as using the programs, see how other instructors are using the programs in their courses and institutions as well. Can be quite a useful resource. We'll also be posting recordings of this webinar and other things, both there and on our YouTube channel. So that can be a good way just to stay in touch with us and have access to that information. All right. Well, as I said, thank you so much for joining us. Let me just stop my share. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's kind of crazy times in the world, but appreciate you taking the time to come and chat to us. And as I said, please get in touch with any questions, and we look forward to chatting with you in the future. Thanks very much. Take care.